Your 13-year-old will not do their homework. Someone tells you, don't pay them. You'll destroy their motivation. That advice comes from real research. I went and read it. It is 51 preschoolers drawing with felt tip pens for a gold star certificate. That is not a cheap shot. That is the actual study, and it is the foundation of the entire idea. So this video asks 2 questions. What did that research really find? And has anyone ever tested this on an actual teenager? The answer to the second one surprised me, and it is the reason I made this. 1973. Mark Lepper, David Greene, and Richard Nisbett. 51 preschool children, aged 40 to 64 months, so 3 to 5 years old. The children liked drawing. That was the point. You can only undermine interest that already exists. One group was promised a good player certificate before they drew. One group got the certificate as a surprise afterward. One group got nothing. Then, 1 to 2 weeks later, researchers watched how much the children chose to draw during free play. The promised reward group, 8.5% of their free time. The no reward group, nearly 17%. The surprise reward group, 18%. So the children who were promised a prize beforehand spent about half as much free time drawing afterward. That is a real finding, and it has held up better than most psychology from that era. But notice what already happened. The children who got the very same certificate as a surprise showed no drop at all. The reward was not the problem. The deal was. Now, a sentence from the paper that almost never gets quoted. The authors wrote that there is nothing in their findings to suggest that agreeing to do something for a reward will always, or even usually, result in a decrease. That is the original authors, in the original paper, telling you not to generalize it. And the field spent the next 50 years generalizing it. In 1999, Edward Deci, Richard Koestner, and Richard Ryan pooled 128 studies in Psychological Bulletin. The headline everyone took away: tangible rewards undermine intrinsic motivation. The moderators tell a much more specific story, and the moderators are the actual answer. Rewards given as a surprise after the fact, an effect of about 0.01, statistically nothing. Rewards not tied to doing the task at all, just for showing up, minus 0.14, not significant. Rewards promised in advance for engaging in something the child already enjoys, minus 0.36. That is the real effect, and it is a narrow one. And verbal praise, plus 0.33. Praise went the other way. Praise increased intrinsic motivation. So the finding is not that rewards are bad. The finding is that promising a prize in advance for something they already like doing is the thing that backfires. I have to give you the other half, because this field has not agreed on this. Judy Cameron and David Pierce ran their own meta-analysis of approximately 100 studies and concluded the undermining effect was limited enough to call the general claim a myth. Robert Eisenberger and Cameron went further, with a paper subtitled Reality or Myth. Deci, Koestner, and Ryan replied, the exchange is on the record in the journals by name. What are they actually arguing about? Largely which studies belong in the pool and how the conditions get coded. That sounds dry, and it is also exactly where the answer lives. Both camps agree on one square, promise a tangible reward in advance for something the child already enjoys, and free choice time on it drops afterward. Deci puts that at minus 0.36. Cameron puts it at minus 0.18. Same direction, half the size. Nearly every other square is null, positive, or disputed. I am not going to tell you who won, because nobody won. I am going to tell you where they agree, because that part you can actually use. Now the thing I did not expect, and the reason this video exists. That meta-analysis of 128 studies codes its participants in a binary. 1 signifies children, 2 signifies college students. There is no adolescent category, anywhere. The advice you are given about your 13-year-old and their homework is built on a literature that does not contain a single 13-year-old as its own group. And it gets sharper. That meta-analysis excluded boring tasks by design because the effect it was measuring requires pre-existing interest. So homework your teenager actively hates is not merely understudied here. It is outside the evidence base by construction. The research was never about that. We just kept pointing it at that. Somebody did, not a psychologist, an economist. Roland Fryer ran randomized controlled trials paying students across more than 250 urban schools. Real randomization, real money, real schools, including 9th graders paid for their grades. And he did something the parenting internet never mentions. He measured intrinsic motivation directly, using the standard instrument from this very literature. He found no evidence that the incentives decreased it. I want to be careful with that sentence because it comes from the working paper's full text rather than its summary. So take it as what the paper reports, not as a headline the authors led with. But it is the closest thing we have to a direct test on the age group everyone is actually worried about, and it did not find the harm. So what did the money do? This is where I have to slow down, because there is a split inside the results that is easy to misreport. I nearly did. The paper's own summary says incentives raise achievement when you pay for inputs, things a student directly controls, like reading a book, and that incentives tied to outputs are not effective. Paying second graders $2 a book raised reading comprehension by roughly 0.18 to 0.25 standard deviations. That is a substantial effect for an education intervention. Paying older students for grades raised their grade point average by about 0.09 to 0.13, and moved standardized test scores essentially not at all. So did paying for grades work? Grades moved. Test scores did not. Whether that counts as working depends entirely on which number you decide to look at. That is not me hedging. That is the finding. And that is the thing I want you to take from this more than any parenting tip. The same study, the same students, the same money, and the answer flips depending on which ruler you pick up. This is how a claim gets made and unmade. Somebody picks the measure that moved. Somebody else picks the one that didn't. Neither of them is lying. It is also why I keep saying this literature is contested instead of telling you what to do. Not because I am being coy, because the honest state of it is contested, and you deserve to know that, rather than to receive a confident instruction built on a coin flip. So what can you actually take home? The one thing both camps agree on: don't make a deal in advance for something they already love. If your child already reads for pleasure, paying them per book is the one move the evidence genuinely warns about. Surprising them afterward looks fine. That was the condition that came out at effectively 0. Praise is not in the danger zone. In the pooled data, it went the other direction. If you are going to attach money to something, the evidence favors paying for what they control, the reading, the practice, the showing up, rather than for the grade at the end. And on your teenager specifically, the confident warnings you have been given were not tested on teenagers. The one large randomized test that did look found no damage to their motivation. That is not permission. It is just the absence of the evidence you were told existed. That is what this channel is for. One claim, traced to where it actually came from, including the parts that weaken it. If we get one wrong, tell us. We will fix it in public with our name on the correction. Every study named here is in the description.